The stars burned red around Zephyria Prime. Fleet Commander Vex Nalani pressed her six-fingered hands against the cold metal of the command deck window. Outside, the dark shapes of Korthic ships moved like hungry insects between the dying flames. Of her fleet. "Report," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. 17 more ships lost in the last hour, said her aide, a young officer whose blue skin had turned pale with worry. The Korthic are pushing through our outer defense line. At this rate, they will reach the homeworld in 2 days. Vex closed. Her large, dark eyes. 2 days. After 6 months of fighting, her people had 2 days left before the Korthic reached their home. She had started this war with 300 ships. Now she had 47. The Korthic were not like other enemies. They did not want land or resources or power. They wanted to eat. Entire worlds, entire civilizations. They would consume every living thing on Zephyria Prime, and then move on to the next system, the next meal. "Commander," called the communications. "Officer from across the bridge. The council is asking for an update." Vex turned away from the window. The Zelani Council was meeting deep underground on the homeworld, safe for now, but not for long. "Tell them the truth," she said. "We cannot stop the Korthic with what we have left." The bridge fell quiet. Her crew had known this moment would come, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. The Zelani Republic, which had brought peace and trade to 12 star systems for over 300 years, was about to die. "Commander," the communications officer spoke again, this time with something new in his voice. "The council is sending new orders." A message appeared on the main screen. Vex read it twice before she understood what they were asking her to do. "They want us to send a distress call," she said, not believing her own words. "To everyone. Every species in known space." Her aide stepped closer. "Commander, no one will answer. The Korthic are too dangerous. Other civilizations will not risk their own fleets for us." Vex knew he was right. The Galactic Trade Union had already refused to help. The Stellar Defense Alliance had closed their borders. Even their old allies, the peaceful Mindari, had cut all communication when the war began. But the Council was desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. "Prepare the message," she ordered. It took an hour to create the distress call. They included everything they could think of. Maps of Korthic territory, battle records, weapon analysis, technical data about the enemy ships. They even offered payment, rare metals, technology, trading rights, anything that might make someone. "Listen." "Broadcasting now," said the communications officer. The message shot out across space at faster than light speed. It would reach every major civilization within days. Vex did not expect any answers. She was wrong. 3 days later, as Korthic ships began their final approach to Zephyria Prime, a response arrived. It came from a small yellow star in a distant part of the galaxy, a star that most civilizations had never noticed. "Unknown transmission incoming," reported the communications officer. "Source is ... system Sol. Species designation ... human." Vex had never heard of either. "Put it through." A new voice filled the bridge. The words were translated by their computers, but the tone came through clearly. Calm, confident, almost casual. "This is Earth Coalition Command responding to Zelani distress call. Message received and understood. Military assistance is approved and en route. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. Prepare for unconventional tactics. Earth Coalition out." The message ended. The bridge stayed quiet for a long moment. "Earth Coalition?" asked the aide. "I have never heard of this species." "Check the databases," Lex ordered. The search took several minutes. When the results came back, they were not helpful. "Humans," read the communications officer from his screen. Carbon-based life form. Single homeworld and sol system. Recently achieved faster-than-light travel. No previous contact with Zalani Republic. Classification. Unknown military capability. Recently achieved faster-than-light travel? Vex felt a cold fear in her stomach. They are a new species? And they think they can fight the Korthik? Meanwhile, far across the galaxy on a blue and green world called Earth, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room of North American Defense Command. The room was full of military officers, scientists, and intelligence specialists. All of them were staring at the large screen on the wall. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Admiral Helen Davis from the front of the room, "we have our first real alien contact, and it is not what we expected." The screen showed the Zalani distress call. Battle footage of Korthik ships destroying alien vessels. Technical data about an enemy that ate entire civilizations. The Korthik. Swarm, continued the Admiral. Based on this data, they are a serious threat. Not just to these Zalani people, but potentially to Earth if they keep expanding. Captain Morrison raised his hand. "What are our orders, Admiral?" "You will take the experimental battle group and provide assistance to the Zalani." "But this is not a rescue mission, Captain. This is a field test." Morrison nodded. He understood. Earth had been preparing for contact with hostile aliens for decades. They had built weapons, trained soldiers, and developed strategies. But everything was theoretical until now. "Dr. Amy Parker will lead the science team," the Admiral continued. "Her job is to study these Korthik in combat conditions. Learn everything. About them. How they think. How they fight. How they can be stopped." Dr. Parker, a thin woman with sharp eyes, stood up. "What about the Zalani? Are we actually going to help them?" "If helping them helps us learn about the Korthik, then yes," said the Admiral. "But remember, people, our first duty is to Earth. Everything else comes second." 2 hours later, Captain Morrison walked through the docking bay toward his ship. The ECS Defiant was not the largest ship in Earth's fleet, but it was the most advanced. Around it, 12 other vessels prepared for departure. His crew was already aboard. Lisa Chun, his tactical officer. Ben Rodriguez, weapons specialist. Kate Williams, communications. Ryan Torres, electronic warfare. All of them trained for this moment. As Morrison stepped onto his bridge, he looked at the star charts on the main screen. The Zalani system was marked in red. Hostile territory. Unknown enemies. But as he sat in the captain's chair and gave the order to depart, Morrison smiled. The aliens had called for backup. They were about to get something much more interesting than that. 3 days later, Commander Vex Nalani stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the empty space where her reinforcements should appear. The Korthik were only hours away from Zephyria Prime. Her remaining ships formed a thin line. Between the enemy and her homeworld. "Contact?" shouted the sensor operator. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at grid 77 Alpha. Vex turned to look at the main screen. 13 ships appeared in flashes of blue light. But as she studied them, her relief began to change into confusion. "Those are the human ships?" asked her aide. The Earth vessels were smaller than Vex had expected. Much smaller. Her own flagship could have carried 3 of them in its main hangar. Their design was strange, too. Sharp angles and dark metal. They looked more like weapons than ships. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Coalition ship Defiant. We are here to assist with your Korthik problem. Request permission to come aboard for tactical briefing." Vex looked at her crew. They all seemed as confused as she felt. But they needed help, and these humans were the only ones who had answered their call. "Permission granted," she replied. An hour later. Vex sat across a metal table from the strangest beings she had ever seen. The humans looked almost normal. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But there was something in their eyes that made her uncomfortable. They watched everything, studied everything. Captain Morrison was a tall man with brown hair and calm blue eyes. Next to him sat a woman he introduced as Dr. Amy Parker. She had been writing notes since the moment she entered the room. "We have studied your battle records," Morrison said. "The Korthik are impressive, very organized, very aggressive." "They have been expanding for over 1,000 years, Vex replied. "They consume entire civilizations. We estimate they have destroyed more than 50 species." Dr. Parker looked up. From her notes, "Tell me about their biology. How do they reproduce? How long do they live? What do they eat besides other species?" The questions made Vex uncomfortable. "I do not understand why this matters. We need to stop them from reaching our homeworld." "Everything matters," Morrison said simply. "The more we know about an enemy, the better we can fight them." Dr. Parker leaned forward. "Do you have any Korthik bodies, prisoners? Communication records?" "We have some debris from destroyed ships," Vex said, "and we have recorded their battle communications." "Perfect. I need to examine everything. The bodies, the communications, their technology. I also need to understand their social structure. Are they individuals or part of a group mind?" Vex felt more confused. "Dr. Parker, they are trying to eat my people." "Does it matter how they think?" "It matters more than anything else," Dr. Parker replied. "Physical weapons destroy ships. But if we understand how they think, we can destroy their will to fight." 2 hours later, Vex watched Dr. Parker work in the ship's science lab. The human woman studied pieces of Korthik ships with tools that Vex did not recognize. She seemed excited by what she found. "Fascinating," Dr. Parker said to her assistant, a young man named Ben Rodriguez. "Look at these neural pathways in the ship's biocomputer. They are connected to a central processing unit. This suggests a hive mind structure." "Is that good or bad?" asked Ben. "It depends on how you use the information." Dr. Parker smiled. "A hive mind has advantages, but it also has weaknesses." The next day, Vex joined the first combined patrol. Human and Zelani ships flew together toward the edge of the system where Korthik scouts had been spotted. "Contact," reported Lisa Chun, from the human tactical station. 3 Korthik ships, bearing 2-7-Mark-4. Vex, prepared for battle. The Korthik scout ships were fast and dangerous. Even 3 of them could destroy several Zelani vessels. "All ships, prepare to engage," she ordered. "Wait," said Captain Morrison. "Let us try something first." "Try what?" Vex asked. Morrison looked at his crew. "Kate, activate the psychological warfare package. Ben, target their communication frequencies." Vex watched in confusion as the human ships moved into position, but they did not fire weapons. Instead, they began broadcasting something. On the Korthik ships, something strange happened. The enemy vessels, which had been moving in perfect formation, suddenly broke apart. They began flying in circles. Some of them started firing at empty space. "What did you do?" Vex demanded. "Subsonic frequency broadcast," explained Kate Williams, a human communications officer, "based on Dr. Parker's analysis of their neural structure. We found the frequency that disrupts their group consciousness." Vex stared at the screen. The Korthik ships were now fleeing at maximum speed, running away. She had never seen Korthik run from anything. "They are broadcasting," Kate reported. "Emergency signals on all frequencies." "What are they saying?" Morrison asked. Kate worked at her console for several minutes, running the alien signals through translation programs. When she looked up, her face was pale. "They are calling for immediate retreat." They say they have encountered something they call the Silent Death. They are warning other Korthic ships to avoid this area. Dr. Parker smiled. Silent Death. I like that. There is more, Kate continued. They are using a word that translates. 2O mind dash breakers dot single quotes. They think we can attack their thoughts. Vex felt cold. Can you attack their thoughts? Not exactly, Morrison replied, but we can make them think we can. Fear is a powerful weapon, Commander. Sometimes it works better than lasers. Over the next few hours, word spread through the towers. Korthic Fleet. 3 scout ships had encountered the humans and barely escaped. The enemy was broadcasting warnings about creatures that could break minds and kill without weapons. Vex sat in her command chair, watching reports come in from across the system. Korthic ships were slowing down. Some were changing course. A few had actually stopped advancing toward Zephyria Prime. I do not understand, she said to Morrison, who had remained on her bridge. You scared them with sound waves. That is all. Why are they so afraid? Morrison looked at her with those calm blue eyes. Because they do not understand what we did. And beings are always afraid of what they do not understand. But you just used a frequency that hurt their minds. It is not magic. To them, it might as well be magic, Morrison replied. They have never encountered psychological warfare before. They fight with claws and teeth and ships. They do not know how to fight an enemy that attacks their fears. Dr. Parker joined them on the bridge, carrying a computer pad full of data. Captain, I have finished my preliminary analysis of the Korthic communication intercepts. What did? You find? They are definitely a hive mind species. But it is not as simple as we thought. They have individual consciousness layered on top of group consciousness. Like humans who can think alone but also work as a team. Is that useful? Morrison asked. Very useful. It means they can experience individual fear, even while part of the group. We can target both their personal anxieties and their collective weaknesses. Vex listened to this conversation with growing alarm. The humans spoke about fear and psychological warfare as if they were discussing the weather, as if attacking minds was normal. Dr. Parker, she said carefully, on Zephyria Prime, we have rules about warfare. We do not torture prisoners. We do not attack civilian populations. We fight with honor. Dr. Parker looked confused. We are not torturing anyone. We are just making them afraid. Is there a difference? Morrison and Dr. Parker exchanged a look. Finally, Morrison spoke. Commander, we appreciate your rules. They are noble, but the Korthic do not have rules. They eat entire civilizations. Sometimes, to fight monsters, you have to become something they fear more than death. As Vex watched the tactical display, showing Korthic ships continuing to slow their advance, she wondered what kind of allies she had invited into her war, and she wondered if they were really allies at all. Commander Vex Nalani sat in the war room with Captain Morrison and his senior staff. Around the table were maps, data screens, and reports about Korthic movements. But what Morrison was explaining made her sick to her stomach. The key to defeating the Korthic is understanding their greatest strength, Morrison said, pointing to a diagram on the screen. Their hive mind allows perfect coordination. No confusion, no miscommunication, no fear of being alone. Dr. Parker nodded. But that strength is also their weakness. If we can disrupt their mental connection, they become lost and frightened. How do you disrupt a hive mind? Asked Vex. Several ways, Morrison replied. We have been developing techniques for years. Earth has studied group psychology extensively. Ryan Torres, the human electronic warfare specialist, activated a new display. We can broadcast interference on their neural frequencies. We can inject false information into their communication network. We can even make them hear voices that are not there. Vex felt her blue skin grow pale. You can make them hear voices? Imagine being part of a group mind for your entire life, Dr. Parker explained. You always hear the thoughts of others. Then suddenly, you hear a voice that does not belong to anyone in your group. A voice that knows your fears, your secrets, your weaknesses. That would drive them insane, whispered Vex. Exactly, Morrison said with no emotion in his voice. The next day, Vex watched from the observation deck as the humans implemented their strategy against a Korthic supply convoy. She had expected to see weapons fire, explosions, the normal chaos of space battle. Instead, she saw something much worse. The human ships surrounded the Korthic vessels and began broadcasting. On the enemy ships, lights started flashing in random patterns. Some Korthic vessels began firing at their own escort ships. Others started spinning out of control. What is happening to them? Vex asked Ben Rodriguez, who was monitoring the attack. We are feeding them conflicting information, Ben explained. Their ship computers think they are under attack from all directions. Their navigation systems think they are flying into a star. Their weapon systems think their escort ships are enemies. But none of that is true. No, but their minds cannot tell the difference between real signals and our fake ones. Vex watched in horror as the Korthic convoy destroyed itself. Ship after ship exploded or crashed into debris. Not one human weapon had been fired. This is not warfare, she said quietly. This is madness. Ben looked at her with confusion. It is very effective warfare. We destroyed 12 enemy ships without losing anyone. That afternoon, Dr. Parker called Vex to the medical bay. I want to show you something, she said. In the medical bay, Vex saw 3 Korthic prisoners in containment cells. They had been captured during the convoy attack. But something was wrong with them. They moved strangely, making small sounds of distress. What is wrong with them? Vex asked. I have introduced a modified virus into their system, Dr. Parker said, checking readings on a computer. It does not harm their bodies, but it increases the production of stress hormones in their brains. You poisoned them? Not poisoned, modified. The virus makes them feel constant fear and anxiety. They cannot think clearly. They cannot coordinate with other Korthic. They are essentially useless as soldiers. Vex stared at the prisoners. One of them was curled in a corner of its cell, shaking. This is torture. No, Dr. Parker corrected. Torture is causing pain to get information. This is biological warfare. We are changing their brain chemistry to make them ineffective fighters. How is that different? Dr. Parker looked genuinely confused by the question. They are not in pain. They are just afraid. The worst came 2 days later. Security Chief Greg Murphy asked Vex to observe an interrogation. She had agreed because she thought the humans would ask the Korthic prisoner questions about enemy plans. Instead, she watched through a reinforced window as Murphy sat across from a captured Korthic warrior. The alien creature was large and dangerous, with sharp claws and armor-like skin. But as Murphy spoke, the creature began to change. Murphy never touched the prisoner, never threatened violence. He simply talked. But somehow his words made the Korthic warrior collapse in terror. How are you doing this? Vex demanded over the intercom. Murphy looked up at the window. I am describing things that this species evolved to fear. Every creature has built-in responses to certain threats. Predators, diseases, environmental dangers. I am simply activating those responses. You are making him see things that are not there. I am making his brain remember things his ancestors feared millions of years ago. Creatures that hunted his species. Situations that meant death. His logical mind knows these things are not real, but his emotional mind cannot tell the difference. The Korthic prisoner was now giving Murphy detailed information about enemy fleet positions, supply routes, and battle plans. All because Murphy had made the creature afraid of imaginary threats. When the interrogation ended, Vex confronted Murphy in the corridor. "What you did in there was evil." Murphy stopped walking and looked at her. "Was it more evil than what the Korthik would do to your people? They would eat them alive, all of them, children included. That does not make torture acceptable. I did not torture anyone. I used psychology." "The difference is important." "Is it?" Murphy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Commander, my job is to protect human lives. If scaring an enemy accomplishes that without killing anyone, I consider it a successful day." 3 days later, the moment Vex had been dreading finally arrived. Long-range sensors detected a massive Korthik fleet approaching the system. 300 ships. More than enough to destroy everything in the Zalani system. "They will be here in 6 hours," reported the sensor operator. Morrison called an emergency meeting. "It is time for Project Nightmare," he announced. "What is Project Nightmare?" Vex asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Dr. Parker activated a presentation. "We have analyzed Korthik evolutionary history. Like all species, they evolved with certain predators, creatures that hunted them on their homeworld millions of years ago. The screen showed strange, terrifying creatures with too many teeth and glowing eyes. These predators are extinct," Dr. Parker continued. "But the fear of them is still written into Korthik DNA. Project Nightmare uses quantum frequencies to activate those ancient fears directly in their brains. You are going to make them see monsters that do not exist? Monsters that their ancestors knew were real," Morrison corrected. "The most effective fears are the ones that feel completely real." Vex felt sick. "And you need our permission to use this weapon? It is your system, your people. The choice is yours." Vex looked around the room at her officers. They all knew. What would happen if the Korthik fleet reached Zephyria Prime? Billions would die. Their entire civilization would be consumed. "Do it," she whispered. 2 hours later, the human ships moved into position as the Korthik fleet approached. Vex watched from her bridge as Morrison gave the order to activate Project Nightmare. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Korthik fleet continued its advance. Then, slowly, the enemy formation began to break apart. Kate Williams monitored the Korthik communications. "They are reporting contacts that do not exist. Massive predator creatures attacking their ships. They think they are being hunted." On the screen, Vex watched 300 Korthik warships suddenly reverse course and flee at maximum speed. An entire armada running from invisible monsters. Intercepted communication suggests they think apex predators from their homeworld have somehow followed them across the galaxy, Kate reported. "They are calling for immediate retreat from this entire sector of space." Morrison turned to Vex. "Problem solved. Your homeworld is safe." Vex stared at the tactical display showing the retreating Korthik fleet. "What kind of people are you?" she asked. Morrison considered the question seriously. "We are the kind of people who survive," he said finally. "And we make sure the things we care about survive too." As the last Korthik ship disappeared from the sensors, Vex realized that her people were safe. But she also realized something else. The humans had not just defeated the Korthik. They had broken them completely, made them afraid to ever return. And they had done it all without firing a single weapon. After the Korthak retreat, Commander Vex Nalani should have felt relief. Her homeworld was safe. Her people would live. But instead, she felt a growing fear about her new allies. The human ships had not left. They remained in orbit around Zephyria Prime, setting up what Captain Morrison called monitoring stations. When Vex asked why, Morrison explained it was for ongoing threat assessment. But Vex was beginning to understand that when humans spoke, they often meant something different than what they said. Dr. Sarah Williams, the human anthropologist, had been assigned as cultural liaison to help the Zelani understand their new allies. She was a small woman with kind eyes who smiled often. But the things she told Vex about Earth history made her blood run cold. Humans have been fighting wars for over 10,000 years, Dr. Williams explained as they sat in Vex's quarters. We have detailed records of every major conflict. 10,000 years? Vex asked. The Xylani had achieved peace in their system over 300 years ago and had not fought a real war since then. Oh, yes. Sometimes we fought over territory, sometimes over resources, sometimes over ideas. We became very good at it. Dr. Williams activated a small device that projected images in the air. Vex watched scenes of human warfare throughout history. Soldiers with primitive weapons, massive battles involving millions of people, cities burning, weapons that could destroy entire continents. This is your history? Vex whispered. Part of it, Dr. Williams said cheerfully. We also built beautiful art, made scientific discoveries, and created wonderful music. But yes, we fought a lot of wars. How many people died in these wars? Oh, hundreds of millions. Maybe billions if you count all of them together. Dr. Williams said this as if she were discussing the weather. And this is normal for your species? Quite. Normal. The interesting thing is how we got better at fighting as time went on. We learned to use psychology, propaganda, biological weapons, economic warfare. We discovered that sometimes destroying an enemy's will to fight was more effective than destroying their armies. Vex stared at the images still floating in the air. Dr. Williams, do humans still fight wars? Not among ourselves. We solved that problem about 50 years ago. But we continued studying warfare, just in case we met hostile aliens. Just in case you met species like the Korthik? Dr. Williams smiled. Or species like anyone else. The next day, Vex met with Nick Thompson, another human cultural officer. She asked him about Earth's military capabilities. The ships that helped you represent about 4% of our total fleet, Nick said casually. 4%? Vex felt dizzy. How many ships do you have? Active warships? About 3,000. But that does not count the construction facilities. On Luna, the asteroid mining operations that can be converted to weapons platforms, or the defense grid around Sol. Defense grid? Automated weapon systems. Thousands of them. They protect our home system from any kind of attack. Nick paused. Actually, after studying the Korthik, we realize our defenses might be a bit excessive for most threats. Vex tried to understand what she was hearing. You built defenses against threats that did not exist? Threats that had not arrived yet? Nick corrected. We always assumed that if we could reach the stars, other species could too. Some of them might be hostile. That evening, Vex called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. Intelligence Officer Matt Johnson joined them by video link from his ship. We have been investigating our human allies, she announced. What we have learned is disturbing. Her aide pulled up data files on the main screen. According to their own records, humans have encountered 17 different alien species before meeting us. 17? Vex stood up. Where are these species now? That is the frightening part, her aide continued. Some of them are thriving under human protection. Some of them have become human allies. Some of them have disappeared entirely. Disappeared? Matt? Johnson spoke from the screen. I have been monitoring human communications. They maintain detailed psychological profiles on every species they have met. Strengths, weaknesses, fears, social structures. Everything needed to control or destroy them. Vex felt cold. Control or destroy? It appears humans categorize alien species into three groups, Matt continued. Useful allies, potential threats, and immediate dangers. They treat each group very differently. Which group are we in? Matt was quiet for a long moment. I am not sure. But I think we should find out. The next day, Vex confronted Captain Morrison. Directly, Captain, I need to know something. Why did Earth really send ships to help us? Morrison looked at her with those calm blue eyes. We received your distress call. We responded. That is not an answer. 17 other species ignored our call for help. Why did humans respond? Morrison was quiet for several seconds. Then he said, Have you ever studied predators, Commander? Predators? Animals that hunt other animals. The best predators do not wait for prey to come to them. They go looking for it. Vex felt her hands begin to shake. Are you saying humans are predators? I am saying humans are survivors. We have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, diseases, wars, and every other threat our planet could produce. We did this by being smarter, more adaptable, and more ruthless than anything else on Earth. That does not answer my question. Morrison stood up and walked to the window overlooking Zephyria Prime. The Quarthic swarm represents a potential threat to Earth. By studying them in combat, we learned how to defeat them. If they ever reach our space, we will be ready. So you came here to study the Quarthic, not to save us? We came here to eliminate a potential threat to humanity. Saving you was a beneficial side effect. Vex stared at him. A side effect? Morrison turned back to face her. Commander, let me be very clear. Earth does not send military forces across the galaxy for humanitarian reasons. We are not explorers or peacekeepers. We are protectors of humanity. What does that make us? That depends on you. Species that work with us prosper. Species that threaten us do not. That night, Vex could not sleep. She walked through her ship thinking about everything the humans had told her. They had saved her people, but only because it served their own purposes. They had defeated the Quarthic, but only to study them for future conflicts. She found herself in the communications center, staring at the long-range sensor displays. The human ships were still there, maintaining their monitoring stations. But now she understood what they were really monitoring. They were watching the Zelani, learning about them, adding them to their databases of alien species. She activated the ship's computer and searched for information about the other 17 species the humans had encountered. The files were limited, but what she found terrified her. Species that had opposed human expansion had suffered mysterious disasters. Plagues that affected only their biology. Economic collapses that destroyed their governments. Civil wars that tore their civilizations apart. Species that had allied with humans were thriving, but they were also dependent on human technology. Human trade, human protection. They had become junior partners in an empire they did not realize they were joining. Commander? Her aide appeared in the doorway. Is everything all right? Vex looked at him. No, she said. I think we may have won the war, but lost our freedom. The next morning, she received a message from the Galactic Council. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the ancient alliance of the galaxy's oldest civilizations was calling an emergency session. The subject line made her hands shake. Response to human expansion threat. She was not the only one who had realized what Earth really represented. As she prepared to leave for the council meeting, Captain Morrison requested a private conference. Commander, he said when they met, I understand you have concerns about human intentions. I have concerns about human methods. That is fair. But consider this. The Quarthic would have eaten your entire civilization. We stopped them without losing a single human or Zelani life. Our methods may seem harsh, but they are effective. And what happens now? Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Now the galaxy learns that there are worse things than the Korthic swarm, and hopefully they make the smart choice about which side they want to be on. As Vex boarded her ship to travel to the council meeting, she realized that the war against the Korthic had been just the beginning. The real war was about to start. The Galactic Council chamber had not seen this many representatives in over 500 years. Commander Vex Nalani sat with the Zelani delegation, surrounded by beings from 43 different civilizations. All of them were here for thee. Same reason. Fear. Elder Korvash of the Fenari Empire stood at the central podium. His ancient species had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. Today, his voice shook as he spoke. Fellow beings, he began, we face an unprecedented situation. A new species has emerged that threatens the established order of our galaxy. Murmurs filled the chamber. Everyone knew he was talking about the humans. The Zelani situation was just the beginning, Elder Korvash continued. Our intelligence networks report that 12 different civilizations have now received what the humans call defensive consultation offers. Vex felt sick. In the 3 weeks since the human victory over the Korthok, word had spread across the galaxy about Earth's psychological warfare capabilities. Now other species were asking for human help with their own enemies. What kind of consultations? Asked Representative Fen of the Mordok Alliance. Military advice, weapon systems, tactical planning. Elder Korvash activated a holographic display. The humans are offering to help solve any civilization's security problems for a price. The price, Vex knew, was always the same. Access to alien technology, biological samples, psychological profiles, and permanent monitoring stations. Species that accepted human help found themselves with very effective protection. They also found themselves unable to make important decisions without human approval. They are building an empire, declared Ambassador Zenth of the Free Worlds Coalition. But they are doing it without conquest. They make species dependent on them. The Korthic swarm was never defeated in direct battle, added Admiral Grix of the Stellar Defense Force. They were psychologically broken. The humans did not destroy their ships. They destroyed their will to fight. Elder Korvash nodded grimly. Our analysis suggests this is their standard approach. They study a species until they understand how to control them. Then they offer protection in exchange for submission. What about species that refuse their help? Asked Representative Fen. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Finally, Admiral Grix spoke. 6 species have refused human assistance in the past 50 years. 3 of them suffered mysterious plagues that affected only their biology. 2 experienced economic collapses that destroyed their governments. 1 had a civil war that split their homeworld. Are you suggesting the humans caused these disasters? I am suggesting that species which oppose human interests tend to have very bad luck. Vex stood up. As the most recent civilization to encounter humanity, her words carried special weight. The humans saved my people, she said. I will not deny that. But they did not save us out of kindness. They saved us to study the Korthic. Everything they do serves their own purposes. What do you recommend? Asked Elder Korvash. I recommend we be very careful about what choice we make next. 2 days later, the Galactic Council reached a decision. They would send a joint diplomatic mission to Earth to establish formal relations. The mission would be led by Elder Korvash himself, with representatives from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. But they would also begin developing new defensive technologies. Weapons designed specifically to counter psychological warfare. Shields that could block neural interference. Communication systems that could not be infiltrated. The message was clear. The galaxy would talk to humanity, but it would also prepare to defend itself. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the ECS Defiant as it returned to Earth. The mission had been a complete success. The Corthic threat was eliminated. Human military capabilities had been demonstrated, and 12 civilizations were now requesting Earth's protection. "Captain," called Lisa Chun from the tactical station, "long-range sensors are detecting the Galactic Council diplomatic fleet. They will reach Earth in 6 days. Morrison smiled. "I am sure they want to welcome us to the galactic community." "Do you think they will try to threaten us?" asked Ben Rodriguez. "They might try, but threats only work if the other side believes you can carry them out." Dr. Amy Parker joined them on the bridge, carrying a data pad. "Captain, I have completed my analysis of all the alien species we encountered during this mission. The psychological profiles are very detailed." "Good work, Doctor. Add them to the database." Morrison looked at the star charts showing the route to Earth. Soon, alien diplomats would arrive at humanity's homeworld. They would expect to find a primitive civilization that had just achieved faster-than-light travel. Instead, they would find something very different. "Communications," Morrison called. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them to prepare for visitors. And tell them to activate the Luna defense grid for demonstration purposes." Kate Williams looked up from her station. "Sir, should I mention that we will be showing our guests the full extent of Earth's capabilities?" "Oh, yes. I think it is time the galaxy understands what they are dealing with." 6 days later, the Galactic Council diplomatic fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Elder Corvash stood on the bridge of his flagship, expecting to see a simple star system with one inhabited world dot. What he saw instead made his blood freeze. The space around Earth was filled with massive installations, orbital shipyards that dwarfed anything in the galaxy, asteroid mining operations that had been converted into weapon platforms, defensive satellites numbering in the thousands. "How many ships do you count?" he asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. There are too many to get an accurate count. At least 3,000 visible, possibly twice that number." 3,000 visible, Elder Corvash repeated quietly. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through." Captain Morrison's voice filled the bridge. "Welcome to the Sol system, Elder Corvash. We have been expecting you. Please follow the provided navigation beacons to Earth Orbital Station. And please note that for your safety, our defensive systems will track your ships during your visit." Elder Corvash looked at his crew. Every face showed the same expression: terror. "They have been expecting us," he said quietly. "They knew we were coming." As the diplomatic fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, they passed more and more human installations, manufacturing facilities, training centers, research stations. The small blue world that had seemed so insignificant was the center of a military empire unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "I am detecting thousands of encrypted transmissions throughout the system. Military coordination on a massive scale. How is this possible?" Elder Corvash asked. "They only achieved faster-than-light travel recently." His science officer checked the data again. "According to our records, humans achieved FTL travel 15 years ago, but these installations look much older. Some of them appear to have been built decades ago." Elder Corvash realized the truth. Humanity had been preparing for contact with alien civilizations long before they revealed themselves to the galaxy. Everything they had encountered so far was not humanity exploring space. It was humanity implementing a plan during the diplomatic meeting on Earth's orbital station. Captain Morrison sat across from Elder Corvash and his delegation. The chamber had windows that showed the massive human fleet moving through space below them. "We appreciate your visit," Morrison said politely. Earth is pleased to establish formal relations with the Galactic Council. Captain Morrison, Elder Corvash said carefully, we had some misconceptions about human capabilities. That was intentional. We prefer that potential enemies underestimate us. Are we enemies? Morrison considered the question. That depends entirely on your choices going forward. Elder Corvash looked out the window at the human fleet. What does Earth want from the galaxy? Peace, prosperity, security for our species and our allies. And species that cannot provide those things? Morrison's expression did not change. Elder Corvash, humanity spent thousands of years learning a simple truth. In any interaction between species, one side sets the rules and the other side follows them. We prefer to be the side that sets the rules. 3 days later, Elder Corvash returned to the Galactic Council with his report. The chamber was silent as he described what he had seen at Earth. Recommendations? Asked Admiral Grix. 2 options, Elder Corvash replied. We can become humanity's allies and accept their protection, or we can prepare for a war we cannot win. Those are our only choices. Elder Corvash looked around the chamber at representatives from 43 civilizations, some of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. Yes, he said simply, those are our only choices. 6 months later, Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest orbital facility. Below him, ships from a dozen different alien civilizations moved in formation with human vessels. The First Joint Galactic Fleet was conducting training exercises. Captain, called a voice behind him. Dr. Parker approached with a satisfied expression on her face. How goes the integration program, Doctor? Excellent. We now have detailed psychological profiles on 43 alien species. Our diplomatic Corps has established permanent missions on 18 worlds. And the new psychological warfare training PR